Hi, this is Sean Murphy of SK Murphy. I will be your MC for today's program on SBIR grants. We're fortunate today to have Paul Scott. Paul Scott has been a technical writer for over 20 years. He uses his training and experience as a scientist to help clients convey highly technical information to potential customers and investors. He also writes white papers and blog articles, as well as grant proposals for academic research and the Small Business Innovation Research Program, the SBIR STTR program. He has helped his customers get grant awards from DARPA, NSF, NIH, the Department of Energy, and several other federal programs. He lives and works near San Francisco. Paul?
Thank you very much, Sean. I'm just going to jump right in here. So as Sean said, I'm a scientist. I'm an experienced technical writer. I've been preparing academic and business grant applications for over 7 years. I've worked in biotech, in data science, in machine learning, in cannabis, and in hardware and software development. I write white papers, blogs, user posts, user documents, and there's my contact information. My email address is at the bottom of each slide. The small business, and this is taken directly from SBIR.gov, the Small Business Innovation Research, or SBIR program, is a highly competitive program that encourages domestic small businesses to engage in federal research and development with the potential for commercialization. Through a competitive awards-based program, SBIR enables small businesses to explore their technological potential and provides the incentive to profit from its commercialization. By including qualified small businesses in the nation's R&D arena, high-tech innovation is stimulated and the United States gains entrepreneurial spirit as it meets its specific research and development needs, which is all very rah-rah, but the basic framework of the SBIR program is funding agencies publish things that they are interested in seeing. They put out what are called funding opportunity announcements, or FOAs, and I'll be talking about those a lot. But you don't pitch the government with your idea. They tell you what they want you to do, what sorts of questions they want answered, and then you respond to that. They are federal funding programs for small businesses. They are grants, not loans. The emphasis is on technological research and development, and they are aimed at commercialization. They actually want you to sell this, so they don't take a piece of it the way a venture capitalist would. And they are focused on needs and priorities defined by the funding agencies. There are 3 phases in the SBIR program. They vary a little bit by agency, but this is a pretty good general introduction. Phase 1 is for research into feasibility and development, up to and including prototype or proof of concept. Projects must be completed within 6 months, and they will award up to $150,000 for that 6-month period. Phase 2 is up to $1 million per award, and they give you 2 years. This is to take it further from phase 1, develops the prototype, and explores marketing and commercialization. And then phase 3 offers no federal funding. By the time you get to this stage, you're expected to seek private funding. So SBIR actually calls itself the Nation Seed Fund. They're trying to give you enough money to get your product ready for market, and after that, they expect that what you've got is attractive enough that you can get private funding. So pitching an SBIR grant is basically like pitching for VC funding. A VC wants to see a profitable commercial product, and so does the government. They want most of the same information, but the government is not wanting to make a profit, and therefore they are willing to fund risky projects that a VC wouldn't touch. Also, they don't want ownership or equity, so you get to keep all your IP, you keep all the money they give you, you don't have to give anything back. And so in general, it's a good way for someone with a good idea to get seed funding with very few strings attached. There are a few strings, but we'll get into that. Who is eligible? Any for-profit business, including a sole proprietorship, with fewer than 500 employees. In some cases, you do have to incorporate. That'll be specified in the FOA. During phase 1, a minimum of 2/3 of the work must be performed by the proposing business. During phase 2, the proposing business has to do at least half of the work. The designated project leader, the PI or principal investigator, must spend at least half of their time employed by the proposing business. And work must be performed in the United States. So even companies that aren't technically American companies, they could be incorporated in other nations, can apply for one of these, but they have to do the work in the US. Now, this slide is probably worth your time just for this, and I can make a copy of this available in PDF. These are links to the SBIR portals for all of the various federal agencies that provide SBIR funding. And then down here at the bottom of the right-hand column, there is a search portal that you can use to find out who has gotten awards in the past and how much they received, and basically in an abstract, what they were proposing. So that can give you some idea of what wins. The main caution that I would give you about that search portal is that while the government does publish who receives an award, those are public records, they do not publish everyone that applied and didn't get funded. So it is hard to judge the success rate. We kind of have to guess at that. The components of an SBIR grant. It starts with the FOA, the Funding Opportunity Announcement. This is put out by the funding agency, usually through their own SBIR portal, but there is also a general government portal for all agencies. It contains all the information about the grant, including the amount of money available, how many awards will be given, sometimes it's more than one, the need that the agency wants to meet. Usually, by the way, in an FOA, there will be a couple of different tracks that a funding agency is willing to fund, and they'll specify that. They'll actually give you, it's usually a number letter combination like 1A or 2B, and you specify which track you're applying on when you put the application in. What they want to see and what they don't want to see. They will tell you exactly the kind of project that they're willing to fund, and they'll also say, don't bother sending us any of these things, and they'll make a list. They really do try to make all of this as clear as possible, and exactly what you need to do to apply. And by exactly, I mean they specify how many pages they want to see, they specify the font that they want the application to be written in. They're very, very precise and detailed. Read the FOA carefully and follow its instructions exactly. I can't emphasize this enough. The most common mistakes that I see come from not reading the FOA or from treating it as guidelines rather than rules. Funding agencies will simply reject non-compliant applications without even looking at them. If they look through your PDF and it's not in the right font, they will just throw it out without reading any further. The first stage is a letter of intent. It's 1 page long. And by the way, if I need to slow down, let me know. I sometimes tend to start talking too fast. I call this planting a flag. The letter of intent is really just a notice that you intend to apply. You give a very high-level sketch of what you propose, no more than 400 words, and you list everyone on your team that will be working on it with a brief description of their qualifications, why you think they should be on your team. The government, you submit this through a portal that the government sets up for this, and once your letter of intent has been submitted, they will send you back an identification number that the system uses to track your application. And that's important because without that identification number, the system won't recognize you. You can't apply any further without that. And just to make it clear, there's going to be 3 components in this system. The letter of intent is the first one. But the FOA will list the deadline by which each component in the application process must be received. And if you're a second late, they will not take it. The concept paper is the second stage. It's 2 to 4 pages long. This is where you begin to build your proposal. You explain the basic operating principles of the technology you're proposing, how it is unique and innovative. And that means you have to go through the current state of the art and why you're better than that. You give them the proposed target level of performance, and it's best if you can supply some technical data to show how the proposed target could be met. And again, this is the kind of thing that a VC is going to want to see. So if you've pitched to a VC before, then you're in a much better position to make an SBIR grant application. How the proposed technology will overcome the current industry problems, the potential impact of the proposed project on the industry. They often want to see something fairly disruptive because, again, they're willing to fund risky propositions, things that may never go anywhere, because they don't care about the profitability as far as their money is concerned. The key technical risks and issues associated with the proposed technology, and why you need federal funding and how much you need. Once the concept paper is in, then you go to the full application, and this is the big one. It's anywhere from 15 to 30 pages. And again, the FOA will tell you how many pages it can be, and you cannot exceed that limit, or again, they'll just toss it. You flesh out the information from the concept paper. The project overview should take about 10% of the page allotment. The technical description is about 30%. Summary of objectives and a work plan is 40%, and team qualifications and the resources that you already have, not the resources you need, is about 20%. The project overview provides the background, the history, success, and current research and development status of your organization relevant to the technical topic being addressed. In other words, what have you done and why does that make you qualified to do what you're proposing? You list the project goal, and these should be very specific, identify targeted improvements to the current baseline technology in the industry and the critical success factors in achieving that goal. And the impact that the funding would have on the proposed project. specifically explain how funding relative to prior, current, and anticipated funding from other public and private sources is necessary to achieve the project objectives. In other words, you're saying to the government, okay, we've got this money that we're putting in ourselves or that we are raising from a bank, but we still need more money to finish this, and this is why. The technical description is a detailed description of the technology, including scientific and other principles and objectives that will be pursued during the project. Show why it's relevant to the FOA. In other words, how are we addressing the need that the government has indicated in the funding opportunity announcement, including specific technical targets and other relevant performance targets. You specify what you're going to deliver at the end of this process. It can be anything from a prototype, and this is phase one, anything from a prototype to a proof of concept. Phase two, of course, you want to have some kind of marketing plan, but in any case, you are laying down specifically what the government can expect to see in return for its money. You show that you can do what you propose, including a description of any previous work you've done and any prior results. This could be, by the way, something that you've done with funding from another SBIR grant. That's not uncommon. In fact, if you can do that, that's a good thing because it shows the reviewer that you've made good use of government money in the past. Describe the current state of the art, how your technology improves on existing solutions, and how your project will advance the state of the art. This gets very detailed, the summary of objectives and work plan. It has everything that you would normally expect to see in a detailed project plan. The periodic milestones, SMART goals, go, no-go decision points, criteria for success, challenges that you expect and how you will meet them, specific tasks and subtasks and who is responsible for each one, and how progress will be measured and verified. Again, this is all very standard for anybody who has done project development and project management. This is just the kind of thing that you have to put together in order to make a viable project plan. And finally, your team's qualifications. Any special expertise, how much time each team member will contribute, the facilities you have available and facilities that you may propose to build using the grant money, and any previous relevant work, patents, demonstrated innovations, anything that you can put together to show the government that you have done relevant and effective work in this area in the past. Tips for applying, I'm going to say it again. Above all, read the funding opportunity announcements and follow its requirements. Be as thorough as possible. You're asking somebody for money, just like you would with a VC, and there are a bunch of other people asking for money. So you have to show them that you are going to do what they ask and how you're going to do that. I had a client who was responding to an FOA that specified that it wanted to lower the price of solar power to 2 cents per kilowatt hour. And in order to make a successful application, you have to make a good argument to show how you're going to meet that goal. Know your market and your industry. Discuss the state of the art, companies you might collaborate with, why your idea is superior to what's out there, and so on. Demonstrate your qualifications through past experience, work to date, and so on. Remember the senator from Missouri. This is a sort of a catchphrase that I got from a colleague in this industry. And the idea is that SBIR funding agencies have to answer to Congress sooner or later. There are periodic legislative reviews of how they're spending their money. And so remember the senator from Missouri, you want to show how your work is going to make a legislator in your area where you're performing the work happy. Are you going to be employing local people? Are you going to be in some way doing something that the senator can then point to and say, I helped get that done? Basically, you want to make your legislator proud by showing some way that you're going to benefit the local community in a way that they can take credit for. So what's the catch? Getting all this money for free? Not entirely. You are going to be treated like a federal contractor, which means that you have to meet all of the requirements that the government has for federal contractors for affirmative action and generally handling your workplace in the way that the government requires all contractors to do. There will be paperwork. They will expect progress reports, financial statements, appropriately worded and delivered applications for payment, and so on and so forth. You may be audited if you receive more than $500,000 in total awards over any period of time. You could be subject to a federal audit. And finally, cost sharing. This is laid out in the funding announcement, but in general, 20 to 50% of the total cost of the project must come from non-federal sources. Could be a VC, it could be a bank, could be your own money, but it has to amount to 20 to 50% of the total cost. Here are some questions that I get a lot. Do funding agencies have any regional preferences? No, but you can make your region a selling point. They're looking for commercial success. So if you have resources in your area, and the Bay Area is good for that, that improve your chances of a successful project, then you should list them. How do you find them? You go to the agency portals that I linked earlier. You can look for FOAs there. Most agencies have newsletters that you can sign up for, and that'll get you some advance notice on upcoming projects. Which agencies have the highest award rate, and what are my chances for winning? We can't say for sure. They publish lists of those who receive grant awards, but they don't tell us about everybody who applied and wasn't funded. So we can't know the success rate for sure. People in this business who help prepare these kinds of things guess that they have a successful funding rate of about 1 in 6 to 1 in 8. My own grant applications have a success rate of about 1 in 5. So I can't say that your chances of getting funding are good, but the only thing you're out is the amount of time that it takes to prepare the application and any fees that you have to pay to someone like me who helps you prepare them. Oops. Do people repurpose their work to fit different agencies? Usually you can. If you have different agencies that are putting out FOAs at the same time, you can submit to all of them. If you're chosen to receive an award from more than one, then you may have to work out between them how much each one is going to pay you. But as long as you show your work meets the project goals outlined in the FOA or FOAs, you're fine. If there's any reason that you can't make multiple submissions, then the FOA will specify that. All right, the slide deck is available in chat, and I can take any questions you have now. Thank you very much.
Hi, Paul. We had one question come in just to get started. I know we've got a number of consultants on this call, and it was can a one-man consulting operation apply for a grant?
Yes. However, I don't like their chances for success. When a reviewer looks at that, at your application, they're looking for something, they're looking for the best chance of success. That's who's going to get funded. And they aren't likely to believe that a one-man operation can do everything that's necessary to get one of these projects to a success point. So a one-man operation can assemble a team, but I don't advise a sole proprietorship to just go it alone.
Okay. We have a question from you. Just to clarify that you do retain 100% ownership of the intellectual property. Can you apply for patents based on what you develop in the program?
Yes, you can. The government is simply giving you money for what they want to believe is a commercially viable product. Everything that you do with that money is yours to keep. The government will not take any portion of it. You can get patents, you can start a company, you can do anything you want to with it. It's yours.
Cool. And one more question has come in, then we'll open it a little more widely. From Larry Staley, what relationship, if any, is there between SBIR grants and the new infrastructure bill? He was thinking that some funding from the bill earmarked for infrastructure areas was addressed by SBIR grants. Are you familiar with that?
I don't know of any specific examples, but I wouldn't be surprised. The funding agencies are the people who determine their priorities. If they are tasked with accomplishing something according to the infrastructure bill, and the bill itself will say, you know, the Department of Homeland Security will handle this, the Department of Energy will handle that, and so on. If they're given a task that they feel should be made part of an SBIR grant, then yes, they will put that out.
We had a question from, because you don't know the timing or the likelihood of funds low, what happens if you've made other commitments and the funding is awarded?
Well, then you're going to have to make a deal with the government. Generally, funding will arrive within about a year, but the application process and the decision process can take several months. So you might not have a check in your hands for maybe a year and a half. If it turns out that you've been hired by, say, another company, or you've founded a company and you don't have time to devote to the project, and again, there's a certain amount of time that you have to devote in order to qualify, then it is possible that the grant will be withdrawn. But if you can make a deal with the government and show how you can meet the requirements of the grant application and still do whatever it is you're doing, then they're fine with that. As long as you can give them the time they require, that's all they need.
Paul, I'm going to ask you to ask your question directly. I can't quite parse it.
Yeah, I have a number of questions.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Okay, the first question is, how many grants will they award per person? Is there a maximum, or?
No, there isn't. I mean, each FOA says this particular funding announcement will award 1 or 2 or maybe 3 awards, but there is no maximum limit on how much a single person can get from different agencies. If, as I mentioned earlier, if you submit the same project to 2 different agencies and both of them agree to fund you, then at that point you're going to have to sit down with representatives from the agency and figure out exactly how much each is going to give you. You may not get, in that case, the full award from each agency because you know, they've got a limited pool of money, and if the Department of Energy is going to give you some money, then the Department of the Army will probably want to give you less money because in their view you don't need as much. And again, if you get a total of $500,000 or more from any number of agencies over any period of time, then it's possible that you will be audited. At that point, you are qualified to be audited in the government's opinion, whether or not they ever get around to doing it. But there is no actual limit on how much money you could receive over time.
Okay, I have a few questions.
Okay.
If you also do a startup, do you need to reapply?
Not unless the startup somehow improves or reduces your chance of success.
Okay.
I would say that in general, just go with what you've got when you first apply, because the time limits are strict. And if you say found a company that changes your potential for success, if it's after the deadline to apply, then you can't reapply anyway. If it's before that deadline, then I would suggest not to, just because you don't want to confuse the nice people at the government. Rather, I would hang on to see if you get a funding approval. And if you do, then you can talk to the funding agency and say, okay, some things have changed. This is how I see the status of things now. But basically, don't worry about it until or unless you get funding, and then you can talk to them.
Okay. And also, you mentioned that they tend to kind of focus on technological R&D, but do they fund
that's phase one, technological R&D, yes.
Yeah, but do they fund basic research as well?
Not unless they have reason to believe that, number one, it has the potential for commercialization, and number two, it meets the goals that they're laying out. Okay. Broadly speaking, they don't care how you get there. If you can show that you need to do some basic research in order to get to a proof of concept or in order to get to a marketable product, then that's fine with them. As long as you can make a convincing case that this basic research is both necessary and productive.
Okay, necessary and productive. Okay, and I've got one more question. It comes down to the research part. How far along in the results do you need to be in to include in the proposal?
The more you can include, the better your chances, because any success that you've had in getting to the ultimate goal, whether it's proof of concept for phase one or a marketable product for phase two, whatever you've done that moves you closer to that goal is a good thing to include in the application, because it shows the government that that you've got a better chance of success. Okay. If you don't have any results to report, then that's fine, but it may make you less attractive than someone who does have that kind of thing to show the government.
That's attractive. Okay. I think that's it for me.
Okay.
Actually, I have one more question.
Okay.
Okay. So you mentioned that it's per grant, that it's for one prototype.
Yes.
So if you want to do multiple prototypes, you have to do multiple grants.
No, not necessarily. At the end of phase one, the government wants to see something that proves that you concept. They don't care if you have more than one. You know, if you can develop different prototypes with different basic configurations and show that to them, they don't mind. The idea is just that phase one should lead to proof of concept, and phase two should lead to a marketable product and a plan to market.
Marketable product. Okay.
We had a woodworking. Can you count your own labor as part of the contribution, part of the investment?
Yes, in fact, you have to. The principal investigator has to has to promise to work at least half time on the project. Now, you can make an estimate of how much your time is worth. Don't go overboard, because the government has a pretty good idea of what your time is worth, and if you try to sandbag them, they won't appreciate it.
So that might bear on Paul McGee's earlier question. If you've got to be 50% committed, then you probably can't be managing more than 2 grants at once.
Probably not. Yes.
Oh, that's a good question. Okay.
Follow-up and clarification on this. So if you don't want to take on equity from someone else or something, but you still need this 20% of someone else's money, and if you don't have the cash, to clarify, if I work at a discount from my normal rate, 50%, or for free, or do most people include their salary or going rate as part of the cost of the grant, I'm assuming?
I believe you can do that. That is, if you can make a convincing case to the government that your time is worth, this much money, and therefore helps to fund the program, then go ahead. But I strongly encourage you not to overestimate the value of your time, because if they think you're doing that, they're not going to be amused. So that's, you can make that argument that that your time is worth X amount of money toward the requirement. Just don't go overboard.
Right, and is the rates you typically pay yourself a consulting rate or an employee rate, or what?
There's no requirement. If you're going to be paying people on your team out of the funding award, then, and this usually will come up in the full application. It won't be part of the concept letter or the letter of intent. But if you're going to be paying somebody that's working on the project, then you just need to include that information in the application, bearing in mind that for phase 1, at least 2/3 of the work has to be done within your team. You can outsource some of it, but only 1/3. And then for phase 2, at least half of it has to be done by the team that's applying. There are provisions for subcontracting and paying for facilities, rent, that kind of thing, but there are limits on how much of the award can go for that kind of thing. What the government doesn't want to see is somebody applying for a grant and then funneling the money to their cousin in Nigeria or something like that. They want to keep this from being a scam.
Sure, but you're generally compensated for you pay yourself a reasonable rate.
Yes, and you should tell the government how much you're going to be paying yourself.
Thank you.
Other questions for Paul? Paul, do you have any final remarks?
Just again, please read the FOA. If you approach me for help with this, I will go through the FOA. That's part of what I do when I help people prepare this thing. Again, if you are going to have somebody like me help you prepare this, then allow enough time. The thing that I personally, as a grant writer, hate most is when somebody hands me an FOA and there is a week before they have to have their first application in, according to the deadline in the FOA. It's very hard for me to meet that, and I can't.
So what would be a reasonable kind of lead time, Paul?
Oh, for the letter of intent, the very first thing that you need to put in, I'd like 2 weeks, a month if possible. For the concept paper, it takes a month to 2 months in order to finish the back and forth with the client and get that thing ready. And for the the full application, that 15 to 30 page monster that comes at the end of it, that can take several months because you want to make the best case you can. And the requirements in the FOA tend to be pretty detailed. So I would allow at least 2 months for that, and the more the better. People are welcome to write to me with questions at the address there on the screen. And the presentation itself should be available on a link in chat. And as I say, the most valuable thing in it is probably that list of funding agencies and their SBIR portals. And I verified those before I came here today, so I know they're right, at least as of this minute. That's all I have. Thank you all very much for attending. It was more people than I really expected.
All right. Thank you.
And thanks, Paul.